Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Sam Francis Lott, and on this Sunday afternoon, when not much is going on, I'm just gonna be recording this video, uh, giving my thoughts on the Beatles albums. But this is going to be a three-part video, so this is part one. I'm just covering the first five albums, so the early albums, and this is something I put on Facebook the other day, and I had mainly favourable reviews that I should go ahead with it from music fans and Beatles fans. So why not? I thought I'd go for it today and give my thoughts. There's going to be, so video-wise, it's going to be more comedy videos in the future. My next video will be a video of Donald Trump, comedy impression video, which could get a few laughs, hopefully. And there's going to be other different kind of videos as well. Excuse me. So, I'm gonna start now. Now, a few years ago, I had a YouTube channel called Sam Lott Music, which was about 4 or 5 years ago since I finished it. But on that channel, anyway, I reviewed every Beatles album. I gave a full review of every album, and different bands as well, and artists, etc. So this is not going to be, with these five albums I'm starting with, I'm not going to go through every song, because you can look at my YouTube channel if you'd like to see that, And I had a lot of good fans on there as well, to be fair. But I'll just skim through and give my thoughts on the albums and favourite songs, maybe least favourite songs as well. Sunday, isn't it? I've got to wet the whistle a sec. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, isn't it? Come on. So, let's begin then. I'm going to get on to the first album. So the debut album by the Beatles, which is called Please Please Me. That's the rear cover. And this album was released on 22nd of March 1963, and it was most of this album, 10 out of the 14 songs, was recorded in 13 hours, which is incredible. I don't think any other band has really recorded a debut album within 13 hours. And so this is very early, so the album includes 8 original Lennon and McCartney songs, or as it was very early on, McCartney-Lennon was the songwriting credit. It changed by the second album, and so on and so forth. But so the album includes songs. The opening song is "I Saw Her Standing There," which is a very good rock and roll number, which is very well known. And this song covers there's a song called "Anna Go to Him," which was Arthur Alexander who was a British singer at the time. Was very popular. And there's "Please Please Me," which is the title song, which was their second single. And the great story about this is when they recorded it, they started it very slow, like a Roy Orbison influenced kind of number. And then their producer George Martin, the late great George Martin, who's commonly known as the fifth Beatle. He helped them enormously with their progression, of course. He suggested to the boys, they should speed it up. So they did. And then at the end of the session, he famously said, "Well done, boys, you got your first number one." I impersonated him in my last comedy impressions video, which was quite entertaining. "Please Please Me" is on you. Yeah, it's very high energy number, "Love Me Do" is on you, which was the first single. It's not that version, it's the album version, the first single they released, which had a session drummer called Andy White on drums. But on this album version, they had Ringo in the band by now, so Ringo plays the drums. And also, there was a version with Pete Best, who was the original drummer, who was famously, sacked from the band. P.S. I Love You, which was the B-side of Love Me Do. Baby It's You, which was like a cover by a girl group called the Shirelles, which is very nice, and John does a good job on the vocals, John Lennon. Do you want to know a secret? Which John wrote and George sang lead vocals on the song. But I didn't know it was George singing until a few years ago. I always thought it was John singing lead, Taste of Honey, which was not a favourite of it. That's one which Paul sings, which wasn't a favourite of John's, and John described it as a waste of money. A waste of money. There's a Place. And the final song on here is Twist and Shout, which is a fantastic rock and roll vocal by John Lennon. And the famous story is he was suffering from a bad throat the day they recorded the album, and he still gave it his all, and he still, he almost like lost his voice by the end of it, but he did a fantastic job, I have to say, yeah. So, right, so that's the debut album, Please Please Me. And Please Please Me with Love Me Do and 10 other songs. 12 other songs, sorry. And so to give a rating to this, there would be improvements, of course, later on. But as far as debut albums by a band goes, this is a solid debut album, and I would give it. I'd give it a nice 8 out of 10, which is very fair. A very fair rating. So before I get into the second album, just take a sip. And we get on to the second album. So this is with the Beatles. 22nd of November 1963, this was released. And so it's not much different to the debut album in terms of it's still the formula is the same at this point in time. It was 8 Lennon and McCartney. 7 Lennon and McCartney penned numbers, and George Harrison had his first number on here as well, which I will talk about in a minute. And hang on a sec, I'm not good at maths, am I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Yeah, right, sorry, yeah. So 7 Lennon McCartney, 1 Harrison, and 6 cover songs, yeah. Similar with the first album. And this album it's a good album. Like, they're all good. But I wouldn't, it's never been a favourite of mine, but there's still some very good songs on here. Some very strong numbers. Like, it starts off with It Won't Be Long. It won't be long, yeah, 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 yeah. Which is very, frenetic, very energetic number, which I enjoy very much. It's a good opening track. All I've Got to Do is the second number, which was inspired by the groups from America, kind of Motown stuff. All My Lovin' is probably the most well-known song on here, which Paul McCartney wrote, and he still performs it live today, I believe. And that's very good. So the next song is Don't Bother Me, George Harrison's first song George wrote within the Beatles. And it's kind of, he wrote it, I believe, when they were down in somewhere, like on a tour, like Torquay. And he wasn't very well. Pardon me. And he said later on, he didn't think it was a particularly good song, but he thought of it more as an exercise to see if he could write a song. But I don't mind it. It's kind of, he set himself apart already from John Lennon and Paul McCartney with like the more kind of, because they were writing love songs at this time and everything, and just like, this is kind of more like, kind of pessimistic really approach to songwriting. Like, it's not really. And then Till There Was You was very good. Very nice guitar solo from George there, which he wrote that when he was 20 years old, and this nice kind of Spanish style almost guitar, which was like really adds to it. And that's a cover by a guy called Meredith Wilson. A guy called Meredith Wilson wrote it, and he was it was from the musical The Music Man from '58, I believe, and Paul liked the song, so he covered it. Please Mr. Postman is next, which was originally sung by an American girl group called the Marvelettes, who were on Motown label, I believe, and John sings it very well. There's a lot of energy on it. Roll Over Beethoven, Chuck Berry cover. George takes the lead, actually, lead vocal on there. I Want to Be Your Man. That's an interesting song. John and Paul wrote it, and they gave it to Ringo to sing lead. But also, John and Paul gave it to the Rolling Stones, and it became their first top 20 hit in England, I believe, which is an interesting fact. I think they were in a taxi, and Mick and Keith from the Stones were after they needed a single, like a second single, and John and Paul were with them in the taxi, and they gave them I Want to Be Your Man. See, so every day's a school day, isn't it? And yeah, the album finishes with Money, That's What I Want, which is a Bradford and Gordy, which is another Motown cover. So there's a lot of influence of American influence on here. So, how should I rate this album, in my perspective? Well, I gave the first one 8 out of 10. Debut album, Please Please Me. And with the Beatles, it's still very good. There's not much difference yet to the first album, but there will be improvements later on. But I'll probably give it. So I gave 8 out of 10. Yeah. It's another 8 out of 10. Yeah, which is good, coming from a fan. Also, Now we move on to the third album, A Hard Day's Night. The third album released by the Beatles, and also the soundtrack to their first motion picture movie of the same name, A Hard Day's Night, which is a black and white kind of a musical comedy, which is this is a very enjoyable film. And the first side, now the first thing to point out to you is every song for the first time was composed by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. There's all originals, and that's the first of the only of the early albums to have all original material, really. And also to note, it's a very solid album. It's my favourite out of the first 4, or the first 5, I suppose, which I'm talking about. And the album opens up with Hard Day's Night, the title song. It's been a hard day's night. And it's great energy, like throughout the album, really. But A Hard Day's Night opens with the famous the opening chord, which it took years for whoever, like people, to work out like what the chords were. It wasn't until 2014, I believe, that someone worked out the thing, and it includes piano by George Martin. So it's like. I think I'm making sense, but it's a very, very well-known opening chord. Still is. I Should Have Known Better is the next song John wrote. John is very dominant on this album, John Lennon, and If I Fell is the next number. If I Fell in Love with You, that's probably my favorite, actually, because it's like it's a nice love song, and the harmonies of John and Paul singing together is really nice. I'm Happy Just to Dance With You is pretty good. It's like a dance number, kind of. And I Love Her. It's a romantic song by Paul. It's nice. It's very nice, it is, yeah. Tell Me Why. And Can't Buy Me Love is the very famous #1 hit, which ends side 1 of the album. Now, the first side of this were the songs which are featured in the movie, but side 2 is the songs which... The non-soundtrack side is side 2, and Anytime at all, it's very energetic, very nice. I'll Cry Instead is kind of a country rockish number. Things We Said Today is kind of a almost haunting early song, really. Uh, Paul wrote that mainly. When I Get Home is pretty good. You Can't Do That is a rocking number. And the album finishes with I'll Be Back. I'll Be Back. It's not Arnold. No, that's a nice kind of, what's the word? Acoustic kind of song, to finish off with. A Hard Day's Night. Yeah, it's a very solid album. Very solid early album by the Fab Four, the Beatles. And rating, well, I would probably give it, if I had to choose. So I give the first two an 8, and this is an improvement on the first two albums, I'd say. Songwriting and performance and, all that sort of thing. So I'll give it a 9 out of 10. A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles. It's a third album. So now we move on to the fourth album. Which is Beatles for Sale. 1964, December the 4th. It was released. And this album, well, I enjoy it very much. I enjoy all the albums, but they kind of, on this album, they revert back to the formula of the first two albums in terms of the 8 Lennon-McCartney and 6 cover songs, like rock and roll songs, whatever. And yes, so 64, was famously a very busy year for the band, where they went to America, and they went to travel the world. They made their first film, Hard Day's Night. So at this time, they were kind of like go through the motions a bit, and they had to record an album before Christmas of 64. So they just kind of went back to the formula of the first two albums. But that being said, there is still some very good songs on this album. The album opens with No Reply. This happened once before, when I came to your door, no reply. And it's kind of, like the last album, Hard Day's Night, was more upbeat, and this is kind of, I don't know, kind of a downer. Not a downer, but like the first 3 songs are kind of more like on the negative angle, really. No Reply, I'm a Loser, which was inspired by sort of Bob Dylan for the first time. The Beatles had met Bob Dylan in August 64, and it was the first time they'd smoked stuff, weed. And they met him in America, in New York, I believe. And he had an influence on their songwriting, especially with John Lennon at this time. And Babies in Black is the third song. So they're kind of the opening 3 songs are more on the negative side, like for the first time. Rock and roll music, as Chuck Berry covered. John does sing it well. I'll Follow the Sun is probably my personal favourite song on here, because Paul wrote the song when he was 16, you know that? But it wasn't, he wrote it still living in Liverpool, like when he was young. But it wasn't until like this time he recorded it, and it started as a rockabilly number, and he slowed it down, and it's a really nice song, nice harmonies on it and everything. Yeah, I'll get on to 8 Days a Week, which is the most famous song on the album, probably. But and there's nice harmonies on there as well. It's a decent song. I still enjoy the album, as I've mentioned the good songs, but there's a few kind of filler-ish songs, like the covers predominantly a kind of like trying to fill the album really, but there's still some energy on here and everything. And well, I probably we get to a rating now. I'd probably give it, if I had to choose, if I make a choice. Yeah, so Beatles for Sale. 10. It's not 10. The later albums I prefer, and we'll get to 10 out of 10 albums then, but I'd give it, I'll give it 7.5 out of 10. So not as strong as the first two, or A Hard Day's Night, but I still enjoy it, but that's the rating I'm going to give it, and there's still some very strong songs on the album as well. So we get to the fifth album, if I can talk properly today, which is Help. I don't know why I said that. Which was the soundtrack to the second movie, which the Beatles made, which was in colour this time. The first one, Hard Day's Night, was in black and white. And they go to the Bahamas and they go to... It's like a James Bond kind of parody where they go around the world and they sing songs and they were stoned throughout most of it, to be honest. But let's talk about the music. So, Help, the opening song, which John Lennon wrote, and he said, he described it as like he was crying out for help at the time. There's a lot of anxiety with the Beatlemania, and the fame at the time was just like driving up the wall, basically. And what's the back cover again? The night before, we said our goodbyes on the night before. It's a very energetic number. Paul mainly wrote it, and it's one I feel is very underappreciated, and I enjoyed very much. You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, which John wrote, and they perform it in the film, in the living room scene. He's on the sofa with his acoustic guitar, and it's very inspired by Dylan, Bob Dylan, with the acoustic folk kind of sound, and John's doing the kind of voice. I Need You that's a George Harrison song, the second he wrote, and lyrically, it's not he would improve a lot. It's a bit simplistic lyrically. Another Girl is pretty good. You're Gonna Lose That Girl is very catchy, and I think it's an underrated song. Ticket to Ride was the number one hit single, and this features on here. And also, it's a very strong song. It's very good. And John described it as the first heavy song. Like he said, it's a heavy record. It's not heavy like compared to some of the later progressive songs, but it's kind of it's for its time. Yeah, I see where he was coming from, kind of. So again, like with A Hard Day's Night, the first side is the soundtrack side, and the second side is the non-soundtrack side. The first side, songs featured in the film. The second side, songs which didn't feature in the film. So we're going to Act Naturally, which is Ringo's vocal moment on the album, which was a Buck Owens cover. He was a country and western singer. An interesting fact, Ringo later, in 1988, Ringo later sang it did a duet of it with Buck Owens, and it went to number one. See? I know my sheep. It's Only Love is nice. And then we have You Like Me Too Much and Tell Me What You See, are decent songs. I wouldn't say they're the best. I wouldn't say side 2 on yours on Help is as strong as side 1. It's still good. I've Just Seen the Face is kind of a folk rock, acoustic kind of number. It's quite fast paced. And then we get to Yesterday, which interestingly, folks, is the most covered song in pop music history. There's been over 3,000 covers of the song Yesterday, from Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Matt Monro, and it's been played a lot, and Paul McCartney has played it a lot in concert. But it's a classic song, undeniably, and I'll still put it on now and then and enjoy it. And he finished with, so this album, Lennon McCartney. There's 2 Harrison songs, and Act Naturally is a cover, and Disney Miss Daisy, the last song, is a cover, so there's only 2 covers on here, and going forward, when I get to my next video, there's no covers, really. There's all Lennon McCartney as the albums evolve, as the Beatles progressed, of course, but this is the last time we have 2 covers on an album. It's not a bad thing. So I'm going to give a rating for Help. Well, I think side 1 is stronger than side 2. I'm going to give it higher than the last album, Beatles for Sale. I'll probably give it it can have a 8.5. Yes, an 8.5 out of 10. The back cover for the CD. All these albums are my 2009 remastered albums, which I've had since I was from a young age. So, yes, so I'm just, that's part 1 of my thoughts on the Beatles albums for now. I've just started with the first 5, but in the next video I'll continue with the middle albums, and in part 3 I'll do the later albums. So that's it for now, and yes, I hope you like it. Feel free to like, comment and share, and I'll catch you next time. I hope you enjoy. Thank you very much.